All right, Michael, how's it going this morning?
Doing well, happy to be here.
How did
having
you,
me.
well, I know you have to start with the disclosure, but after doing that, why don't you tell folks a bit about your background, how you ended up at the CFTC?
Yeah, happy to. Just to be abundantly clear, the views I express today reflect only my views and not the views of the Commission or the broader agency staff. To tell you a little bit about my background, I come from the private sector. I started off my legal career in-house at a crypto exchange back in 2019, 2020. At the time, everyone thought I was incredibly insane. But fortunately, I was an ecosystem participant, really believed in the technology and the future of the space. From there, I ended up joining two law firms, one of which was Wilkie Farr & Gallagher, helped build out the crypto practice there with former chairman Chris Giancarlo, and now current CFTC chairman Michael Selig. And now I have the opportunity to fight the good fight from the inside.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. And I think we should start with, some action you guys took a few weeks ago on perpetuals. You guys released guidance. Would you give us a plain English overview of what that guidance says?
Yeah, absolutely happy to. I think let's just take a step back for a second, though, and think about where we are, where the crypto industry is. Thanks to the leadership of President Trump, Genius Act is law of the land, Operation Choke Point 2.0 is dead, clarity is on the cusp of being signed by the president, and now there is regulatory clarity for perps in the US. So thinking about what the agency did just a few weeks ago, ultimately the takeaway is true perpetual contracts can be offered through CFTC registered platforms. Really a watershed moment for the industry because the last time a new derivatives product was approved by the agency was over a decade ago. So really a watershed moment and really important for the crypto industry.
It seems to fit into a broader objective of the commissions right now, which is to onshore as much activity to the US as possible, or at least onshore markets within your jurisdiction. Is that right? What is the broad theme? How does it fit into that? Why is that a priority?
I think that's precisely accurate. There is right now a large onshoring effort to reshore a lot of the innovation and the builders who fled the United States during an era of regulation by enforcement. I probably don't need to tell many of you in this room, but for far too long, builders, innovators, the crypto industry writ large was really pushed offshore because of this regulation by enforcement approach. And Chairman Selig is in the seat for just over 100 days now, and really wanted to make sure that the regulatory environment promotes responsible innovation, which is actually a mandate in the Commodity Exchange Act, which many people are not aware of. So yes, there's a large onshoring effort, as reflected by the Innovation Task Force, which, as you mentioned before, is dedicated to delivering clear rules of the road for three core verticals: crypto assets and blockchain technologies, artificial intelligence and autonomous systems, and then last but certainly not least, event contracts and prediction markets. So that is just one of the ways that the chairman really believes in onshoring innovation, because as part of the job there, it's meeting with innovators, meeting with builders who have been pushed offshore, and really thinking through ways that the regulatory framework can be updated or addressed to account for these new innovations.
For firms in the room that may be thinking about listing similar products, what should they take away from the guidance from May 29th?
Really perpetuals are not a one-size-fits-all approach. The chairman's been abundantly clear about this, both in the public context, but also in private meetings with industry stakeholders. And if you look at what came out just a few weeks ago, it's really limited to just crypto, or more specifically, digital commodity perpetuals, right? And so layer one network tokens like Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum. But really, when you start thinking about other products and other asset classes, it's really important that folks interested in listing those come into the commission, work with agency staff. There's a lot of issues that need to be addressed, particularly when it comes to agricultural products, where there's physical delivery and harvesting seasons. And so really, the takeaway is, as historic as it was, it's really just limited to digital commodity perpetuals. And so to the extent folks are listening or interested in listing perpetuals outside of what's contemplated by the approval order, please come in and speak with the agency.
As you know, Solana is a public blockchain, and we, and I'm sure others in the room, are very interested in what the commission is thinking about with respect to on-chain perps markets. Can you talk to us a little bit about where that is and where it's heading?
Of course. I would say, there was a foundational issue that really needed to be addressed, and one that the Commission has really been thinking through for well over a year now, which is how are perpetuals, or how could perpetuals be classified from a regulatory perspective? And so once that foundational issue was addressed for on-exchange derivatives or on-exchange future contracts, which is what the Commission recently approved, now people can really start thinking about how to address this in the DeFi context. And so, for example, with perp dexes, there's really interesting and thorny issues there, one of which some of you all may be familiar with is Section 4A of the Commodity Exchange Act, requires futures contracts to be traded on exchange. Well, what does that look like in the context of a perps dex, right? Are these DeFi protocols and these decentralized exchanges sufficient to be an exchange for purposes of listing futures contract? That's one of the many issues that we all have to think through, but to the extent people are interested in working to solve these problems, please come in and talk to us. As part of my job on the Innovation Task Force, I would say I am every single day reviewing proposals that come in through the door, thinking through these issues, and so please, I'd welcome you all to come in and speak with us.
On the crypto side of the equation, beyond perps, what are the agency's priorities at the moment?
It's an excellent question. I would say certainly perpetuals was one. You know, the chairman's been abundantly clear since his first remarks as chairman at the joint CFTC-SEC Project Crypto event a few months ago now. And really that speech was an opportunity for the chairman to lay out how he's thinking about priorities. And so what's included in that was, of course, perpetuals. And during those remarks, he did give a nod to DeFi perps. So to your previous question, it's something that I'm spending a lot of time thinking about now. But in addition to that, tokenized collateral initiatives, we have both new entrants and traditional firms alike coming in, wanting to talk about collateral, tokenized collateral specifically, and how that could be incorporated into the derivatives market. In addition to that, of course, prediction markets and event contracts is front of mind. Some of you may know that the agency recently put out a proposed rulemaking. Now we are in the 45-day comment period, so to the extent you all have views, I'd encourage you to really participate in that process as the agency is thinking through these issues. But outside of that, of course, really just bringing the derivatives markets on chain, right? How does the agency think through about updating some of the rules and regulations to account for this new frontier technology?
And tell us about this harmonization. I remember the launch event when Chairman Atkins came over to the CFTC for Mike's inaugural speech, or Chairman Selig's inaugural speech, excuse me. What is the MOU? What is the dating between these two agencies right now?
Well, I think for far too long, and you alluded to it in your opening remarks, the agencies, both the CFTC and the SEC, have been in a jurisdictional turf war. Right? If you think about the Gensler era years, everyone was saying that every type of particular crypto asset is a security subject to the SEC's jurisdiction. The agencies were essentially in this jurisdictional turf war. And so really the MOU is to reflect a new chapter in the relationship between the two agencies. And some of you may know that Chairman Selig was formerly at the SEC as chief counsel of the Crypto Task Force, so really has a strong relationship with Chairman Atkins. But harmonization really isn't just at the principal level, it's really agency-wide. And so what that means from my seat is, leading the Innovation Task Force, we of course coordinate with our counterparts on the SEC's Crypto Task Force on a daily basis. But even outside of that, the agencies and the relevant divisions are coordinating as well when thinking through some of the challenging and novel issues that are being presented with blockchain technologies. But in addition to that, harmonization is really about making a better regulatory framework for the market participants that the agencies oversee. Right? I think everyone would acknowledge that products span jurisdictional lines, many participants are duly registered, and so really ensuring a harmonized framework between the two agencies will create a better environment for you all to operate in, to build in, and so that innovation could flourish in the US.
How are you thinking about the Clarity Act and what's going on in Congress? I think the Commission is quite busy and is committed to using its existing authorities, which is very welcome to address many of these questions. But what are you guys thinking about with respect to the Clarity Act? What can you not do without Congress acting?
Well, I just have to give a nod to everyone in Congress who has worked incredibly hard to get Clarity where it is today. Really on the cusp of getting to the president's desk, which we're incredibly optimistic about. But really, statutory clarity is incredibly critical for the industry, right? The agencies do have a lot of tools at their disposal, but nothing is as set in stone as statutory clarity. And so with that, of course, the agency will have an increased role over spot digital commodities. There are rulemaking initiatives outlined in there, working with our counterparts at the SEC. But really, statutory clarity is critical, and there's no substitute for it. So we remain optimistic that clarity will get done and get to the president's desk by July 4th, and we sit ready to start implementing once done.
I think there's 65 plus rulemakings in there, so it'll definitely keep you all
We'll certainly be busy.
Yeah. And I think the biggest implication is it will expand your jurisdiction to include digital commodity spot markets.
That's right.
How are you guys thinking about that?
Well, the agency right now is really undergoing a tech transformation. And so what I mean by that is, AI is being rolled out through the agency, but in addition to that, in anticipation of clarity passing, working with a lot of vendors to enhance blockchain analytic capabilities, working with some of the preeminent names in the space that you all are probably familiar with, to make sure that when clarity passes, that the agency is well suited to oversee this new market.
What about the other areas that are in your portfolio via the Innovation Advisory Committee? What's going on with AI? I think it's, on a daily basis, I'm shocked by the progress occurring in AI.
That's
How
right.
are you thinking about AI interacting with markets in your jurisdiction?
AI is really interesting. I would say most relevant to the derivatives market is really when you start to see agents engaging in trading activities or regulated activities on behalf of customers, on behalf of, say, funds, for example, and agentic finance, right? I think a lot of people come and talk about how agentic finance has the opportunity to transform the way the markets operate, such that you can deploy an agent can have its own digital wallet, use stablecoins, for example, and tokenized collateral. And so really you're seeing an integration of crypto with AI and then blending into the derivatives market. So it's something we're looking at very closely and thinking about a lot.
I wish you luck on that one, because I think crypto raises a lot of policy questions, but they're all easy next to agentic finance.
That's right.
And tell us a little bit more about the rulemaking. I know we can all make our views known via a comment period, so we will do that. But at least tell us what's in that rulemaking.
Yeah, of course. And I certainly can't prejudge any of the issues in the rulemaking or what the rule contemplates. But I would say, just to give you a bit of a historical lens, since Chairman Selig has been in the seat, there's been in prediction market advisory, an advance notice of proposed rulemaking, now a proposed rulemaking which addresses, one of the subset of issues that was contemplated in the advance notice of proposed rulemaking. And so really prediction market rulemaking is front of mind. And that is because for too long, these markets are not new, right? They've been around since the 90s, for many decades now, but for too long, due to regulatory inaction or regulation by enforcement, there was really no clear rules of the road for this market. And so it's absolutely critical to promote responsible innovation and fair competition in the United States to get rules in place for this market. And so when you think about the rulemaking, there's questions around what type of contract should be permitted in the U.S., of course. But again, please, I'd encourage all of you to let your views be heard.
How does the Innovation Advisory Committee inform your work?
So the Innovation Advisory Committee really is an incredibly talented group of people that represent a diversity of viewpoints, from traditional market participants to some of the new entrants to also academics as well. And really, having that diversity of viewpoint is critical, right? Because oftentimes sitting at the regulator, you sit in this ivory tower where you hear about these issues and you can think about them a lot from a philosophical lens, but you don't ultimately know how they affect the market participants. And to me, it's critical that you have this understanding so that you know what the implications are of, say, a rulemaking that comes out of the building, or say a no-action letter that comes out of the building, right? And so having the views of the market participants who sit within the regulatory sphere that at least the CFTC oversees is critical as the agency thinks through a lot of these new issues and a lot of the emerging technologies.
Beyond emerging tech, what is the commission focused on in the more trad space?
Well, listen, I do think innovation is off. When people think about innovation, it's sometimes misguided in the sense that people equate innovation with only the new market participants, but it's really innovation across the entire spectrum of market participants. And so whether that's some traditional firms wanting to incorporate tokenized collateral into their business model, that's something that, of course, is really exciting to at least me. But in addition to that, of course, the farmers, ranchers, and producers with the COT report, for example, a lot of other initiatives outside of just the innovation agenda, and it's something that, of course, the commission is thinking about a lot.
Got it. You're about 6 months into the job, I think.
Yes.
What's been surprising? What did you not expect?
What's been surprising is really how many views will come into the building and how thoughtful a lot of people are coming in, because these are issues that people have been thinking about for decades and for years. And so really seeing the impressive people come into the building, the builders in the United States who want to stay here in the US, they don't want to move jurisdictions, they don't want to be pushed offshore. Really, it's refreshing to see, because for far too long, as we discussed, the regulation by enforcement approach really deterred people from coming into the building because they were afraid that they'd come in with a novel business idea or bring themselves to the attention of, say, the commission or agency staff and then be met with an enforcement action or a Wells notice. So really, to me, I was incredibly excited to see people wanting to engage with us, wanting to engage with the Innovation Task Force, and really come with thought out, fully baked ideas that demonstrates how much they've been thinking about these issues and how it affects their business.
Got it. So any advice for folks that have innovative ideas? That
Please come in. Please come in and talk to us. Certainly the Innovation Task Force meets with market participants, I want to say daily, but probably more on a weekly basis, meeting with industry participants, again, both new entrants and traditional firms alike. Please come in and talk to us. We want to hear from you. We want to hear the issues that you're facing with as you build here in the United States, and ultimately want to work together to update the derivatives framework.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.